Well, hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. We are delighted to be here. Thursday afternoons are getting to be quite a favorite for the GiveSmart team because it's a time to focus on some good news in a strange global situation. I am Maureen Blanford. I'm VP of Marketing here at GiveSmart, and welcome to all of you. These are trying times, but our team has been flabbergasted to see the results from so many brilliant fundraisers across the country, and we really just couldn't not share that. So today is the 7th episode in our Pivot Success series, in the hopes that we all can continue to inspire each other in the art of the possible. Today we are joined by the fabulous Melissa Gorczynski with Community Sailing of Colorado and Adam Gutchin with Windsor, Connecticut Chamber of Commerce. They've stopped by to share their separate stories. We've got a lot to cover today. Melissa and Adam, thanks so much for joining.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Brilliant. And also with us today on our very full panel are our very own Brandon Steck, GiveSmart's Director of Marketing, and Patrick Clore, GiveSmart's Head of Customer Insights, both deeply experienced fundraisers in their own right and really closest to our data on the over 1,100 customers who've had to pivot since mid-March. Brandon and Patrick, also, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Maureen. It'll be fun today.
Fabulous. Okay, so a couple of notes on resources, and I've asked Melissa and Adam to hang out after the main content to answer your questions, because I know we always get a lot of questions. A couple notes on resources moving forward. So today is the 7th in a series of, we think, 9 customer successes, and we have a lot of resources on pivoting from a live in-person event to virtual, and we will put those in chat. Moving forward, you'll be hearing a lot more from us on outside the room resources. So how can you continue to fundraise all year round outside the big gala room, or even have a blended fundraising approach? So those resources in chat, and we're delighted to share those. Before we really dig in, we really want to get a feel for how you're feeling today. And so we can throw up the poll, and if you all can just weigh in when you have a moment. But is there a chance that you're still feeling maybe a little paralyzed, and now what? What are we going to do? Are you already starting to figure out how you're refiguring 2020? Or are you in the mindset of like, okay, this is the new normal, let's go? So as you are weighing in, just wanted to see how this populates, and Kelsey, you'll probably have to help me out. Normally what we do here is we have our guests talk about their mission, but so let's just give it a few more seconds, and then we will populate it, and we'll get Brandon's feedback and assessment. I'm actually also covering a little bit of a tech difficulty I'm having here on my end. Okay, Kels, can we go ahead and populate? Okay, Brandon, what are you thinking?
You know, this is a little interesting. We've been seeing a downturn in the people who are in this now what category. So interested to see, you know, if today helps. I think there's a lot of really good information that's going to be shared. And it's really great to see so many are refiguring 2020, kind of thinking about the new normal and what's the future as we look forward here.
And how does that compare to past weeks? I know we just let the poll go, but what are you seeing here on the trends?
So what's interesting about this, like I said, you know, we've seen a downturn over the last couple webinars. So we've asked this several times now in the now what category. So obviously people are finding some answers. People are starting to figure out their 2020. And some are rearing up and really ready to go for new normal. So that's exciting. We're going to continue to track this as we do these, as it is interesting to see how everyone kind of feels as we go.
Perfect. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right. So here's what we're going to be covering today. We'll talk to both organizations. Melissa will start, and then Adam will follow. We'll talk about their pivot. We'll talk about donation impact stories. We have a hilarious digital coin flip that we'll tell you about in Melissa's section. As ever, really important, the community involvement and support. And then we will do as many Q&A as we can get to in the time remaining. So as ever, a lot to cover on the now what. Melissa, remind me, your original event was scheduled mid to late April?
It was actually April 11th, and then we ended up doing a gala week from the 20th to the 25th in April.
Perfect. All right, well, let's get started. Melissa, can you give us a high level on your mission?
Sure. So Community Sailing of Colorado, it's our job to make sailing, accessible to all. So we do that by a variety of programs, one of which is our adaptive sailing program for individuals with diverse abilities. We have an outreach program for underserved youth, and then a scholarship program. So our gala fundraiser has done its best to really help us make these programs as low to no cost as possible for those participants.
Perfect. So when all this happened, Melissa, you really didn't have an option to just push off fundraising, right?
No, not at all, because we have a lot of programs that are getting scheduled in hopes that we're able to actually get out sailing this summer. So we had to push forward as much as we could.
Great. All right. So Patrick, talk us through with Melissa the fundraising elements that our combined team pivoted to.
Absolutely. So I think kind of the first thing that stuck out to me that I think Melissa and her team did a great job is exactly what she mentioned of Gala Week. So, okay, the event originally scheduled for the 11th, obviously postponing isn't an option, so adjusting. I think the turning it into the Gala Week is something we've seen some other people do, and I think you can build momentum leading up to kind of the main day of it, which was April 25th in this instance. But I think, being able to do that, and then they leveraged live streaming for it and put up this kind of display screen, which I think was a good way of engaging people overall. And Melissa, I know you'd said, if I'm not mistaken, that you guys historically have always opened up the auction a little bit, leading up to get some momentum, trying to get some revenue on hand. So it wasn't totally a foreign concept, but hadn't really made it a kind of full week-long endeavor. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It was really just for people to be able to browse the items and get excited about them. And, if there were items they needed to coordinate with other people on to really get their bids in on that Saturday, it was all very much a Saturday focused event.
Nice. And I know the other thing that, I think people are doing for the first time, I'm doing it for the first time, both personally and professionally, is all the live streaming and different things. And I think especially, Melissa, if you could talk kind of about how you guys, decided to put up, I think, the display screen in particular to try and kind of get the ball rolling. And was that something that people enjoyed, made a difference? Kind of curious to hear how that went.
Yeah, it definitely did. And this was actually the screen of what we put up after we went live personally. So I know we'll talk about heads and tails in a little bit, but that was kind of our, the big hurrah on Saturday evening. We went live personally. And then at the end of it, we left this screen up. So even if people missed our live chat, they were able to actually go here, text to give, see their name pop up. So it was still interactive, beyond the event, our quote unquote live event itself. And whenever you see that, oh, so-and-so's live, it gives you a little bit more of that, interactive credibility.
No, that's awesome. It is nice to see kind of bringing the face-to-face online. I think one of the other kind of things that really stuck out and the team did brilliantly is talking about the impact. So they put on the home screen of their fundraising campaign, put these two videos kind of talking about what the organization did. And I think in particular, the one at the bottom there, where having a recipient of a scholarship, talking about what that did for them, is something that I can't advocate to people enough, as well as, I love what they did with putting, here's what we did with the funds that were raised last year, and painting the picture for people of what their gifts and what their contributions are going to do. As well as obviously giving people the ability to make a one-time contribution or do it monthly. But I was curious, Melissa, I forgot to ask you this before, is in terms of getting people to send in these videos and kind of participate, if that was something people were reluctant to, or, happy to send them in.
Oh, very happy. And it was very much an actional conversation. So we hopped on Zoom with these two and we're able to ask them questions, and we just recorded it and then put it up as a post. So it's nice to have where we could put a 1-minute post up and send people right back to our Get Smart homepage where they could watch the whole interview. So it was very nice, and obviously people have a little more time on their hands now, so they're very, very happy to help us out with this. No,
that's awesome to hear. And I think kind of similar to what you mean, bringing bringing as much of the personality of the organization, of the people supporting it, I think is very well done, and something that's definitely I was excited to watch in all the videos, and I think they were in great engagement. And then kind of the next thing is we talk about different fundraising elements. You know, if you'll pardon my sailing pun, I'm going to try to limit them, but I'm not me if I don't. Is if the sailors are all aboard, it's one thing, but if they're not physically on the boat at an event, item distribution is always a little bit trickier. So I know, you know, from a donor communication, what we have up on the screen is what Melissa and her team put on their site. So donors, both as they were bidding, could get information, but also knew what to do after the fact. And Melissa, if you could just kind of talk about, you know, for your team from a facilitation of the items and getting them to people, you know, kind of how that process was for you guys, because I know it's definitely something that is foreign compared to when at the end of the night people are just going to grab their stuff and go.
For sure. And this was something we went back and forth about a lot, because we were really hoping to get more of a nationwide engagement, because we really aren't able to do that in an in-person event. So it was, how do we talk about covering the costs of shipping? So we actually put details within each item if there would be any additional shipping costs. If it was a gift certificate, you know, something small that we could either mail or email, that was super easy. And then with the actually, you know, getting the physical items that were a little bit larger to individuals, for the most part, it's been really easy, just emailing them, coordinating with them, you know, either having somebody swing by the house, pick something up off the porch. It's definitely been a learning curve to be able to keep everything organized, especially when, you know, we had 3 different people essentially with all of these different items to coordinate between us before we could actually give out those items. But I think keeping it organized was really important, but it really honestly wasn't as bad as we expected.
You know, Melissa, I just wanted to pick up on a thing you mentioned about knowing that being online meant you could grow your reach. And as painful as it is for people to not be together because you miss that sort of tactile piece, at what point in the process did your light bulb go off where you were like, maybe we can grow our reach here?
I think it really had everything to do with that first decision to make it an online event where, you know, we could obviously see it as a very big loss and not being able to have our community in the room together, but at the same time seeing it as an opportunity and what we could gain with leveraging an online platform. So it was really the mindset that it took to really expand that and be creative and see, you know, how we could, you know, using that heads and tails to really get more people involved who may not otherwise be involved in any event we have.
Love it.
Right. And then as we go forward, so as we talked about some of the things that you can do in person and not, I know one of the questions that a lot of people are asking is what are some of these different fundraising elements? And I'll go with my standard default of there's things that you can do in Frozen that you can't do in other movies. And so you just adapt to the times and adjust. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to put a video in the chat that I would highly encourage everybody to view, but similar to how most physical events, there's a heads tails, and you know, people stand up and they put their hands on their head, put their hands on their hips, flip a coin, and at the end there's a winner. I think that Melissa's team did an awesome job of doing this. Saw some great engagement. It was great to see that William from the video here that we're sending didn't capsize. But Melissa, again, to pardon my pun, you are the skipper on all this. So if you could talk about it, you know, it's truly an amazing thing that you guys did in something that I think shows that with a little bit of creativity in hustle, you know, there's definitely a lot of options that can exist.
Sure, thanks. So this was a lot of fun, and we got a lot of feedback from our participants about this being kind of the highlight for those who participated in this aspect of it. So what we did was we collected a lot of, you know, items that people at this point probably can't order online or couldn't order online in mid-April. We called it a quarantine kit, and it had, you know, an industrial roll of toilet paper, a bidet, puzzles, games, kind of things that are all of a sudden high value. So, you know, after getting all that underway, and then really our heads or tails at our in-person event is pretty popular. So we were really doing our best to figure out how we could turn this into an online thing, and we got some incredible response from, we'll call them sailing celebrities. We were able to reach out and just ask randomly, like, hey, would you mind doing a coin toss? it's for, a virtual gala that we're doing. And we were just overwhelmed by the number of people who were able to submit, and people who, if you're a sailor, you might recognize. And so that was a real treat to have these, kind of celebrity, attendees, if you will. So here Willem was able to, essentially turn his bathtub into a sailboat and make it a really funny coin toss. And then what we did, we collected all of everyone's guesses up front. So it was essentially 2 weeks leading into our gala week. We really recruited as best we could people to, sign on to our heads and tails. And it was a $10 cost, which we thought ended up being a really good entry level cost, because usually it's $20, but given the online virtual version of this, we thought 10 would be better. And we ended up making more this year than last year in our in-person heads and tails. And we were also able to get people from all over the country. And we were, posting a map the week before of which states were involved. So it really was, something that was building, it was gaining steam and allowing us to really get a lot of users in our system before, we kicked everything off on Monday. And then that just allowed us a lot more leverage moving forward throughout the week. And we ended up even, our winner for our biggest premier item was someone who would not have been part of our gala at all had it not been for heads and tails. So it was definitely something that took a lot of work, but was absolutely worth it in the end.
Okay, just to make sure, you lowered the cost to do heads and tails, but you beat your target for that element?
We did, yep.
I love that. Love it. Okay, sorry, keep popping in, Patrick, over to you.
No, that's awesome. I think that is fantastic. And I think obviously the results, but I think, one of the things, as we talk about spreading the reach and different things, the fact that a person who won one of the more financially beneficial, gifts from a revenue generating standpoint was somebody who was brought in through it. Is one of the coolest things that I think I've heard over the past, 30, 60 days here. And I think just an awesome example of any game can be virtual and making giving easy. And I think that, flipping a coin is one of the lower, level of effort things. So I think being able to engage people and hopefully, Missa, the people who did send in videos or stuff like that, that was a great way for you guys to engage your community the guy's thing here where relative obscurity was also one of the best things I've seen. But I think just a great all-around example of engagement across the board for sure.
Yeah, we were very pleased with how this went and have gotten a lot of feedback that it was for sure something that people really enjoyed and engaged with.
Fantastic. And I think the one question, we've had like 7 of the same questions. So on the heads test, we'll ask it real quick just since it is mine, is how you guys went about picking the winners.
Sure.
Is the number one question that I realized we hadn't covered yet.
Yeah, so it was a Google form that we just sent out. So anytime somebody purchased heads and tails, I shot them a prefab email that gave them a link to a Google form that they then answered 15 different times, just heads or tails. So we got each of their 1 through 15 guesses. We knew it would probably land somewhere between 7 and 10, like it usually does in person. So then every day we released a coin toss video, and then a simple spreadsheet sort later, we were able to come up with a list of the people who were still in it. So one thing that we were really careful about doing was not posting the list of people on social media, one obviously for privacy purposes, but the other was really to, have those people re-engage back on our homepage. So each day we posted the video on our homepage, as well as the list of the people who are still involved underneath of it. So it gave people an excuse to check back to our GiveSmart homepage every day. Which was a really nice, way to get them, again, just back to the silent auction, back to looking at those premier items. But we did, get a lot of traction with posting just the video itself on social media and then having that list back on our homepage. So it turned into a very simple, just sort of sort through a spreadsheet, and every day it just narrowed itself down. One thing that we didn't realize that came up was everyone got eliminated on Friday because everyone guessed the same thing who was still in it. So we had to do a mulligan, and we kind of played that up we went live on Friday. So we played that up and turned that into kind of okay, well, this is our first virtual event. We had this thing, and here we're just going to move on. So that was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I one of the other things that, You'd mentioned, I think, was an awesome thing you guys did in terms of leveraging social, which again, it's, being able to take advantage of free resources, wherever they exist. But, I know your team did a great job of communicating and getting some messages out. But I think, the one thing, Melissa, I was curious to have you talk a little bit more about is how you kind of almost use social media as a hook and posted small snippets of things to drive more so traffic to the web page so that people were landing specifically in the places where hopefully they would help bring in some revenue generating for you guys.
Yeah, we did a lot of links just back to specific items and to specific, aspects of our homepage. So it was definitely as many opportunities as we could to put teasers out there on social media that would then, drive people back to our GiveSmart homepage. So that was definitely helpful for sure.
Love it. Okay, so Melissa, you get a moment to breathe. We're gonna turn over to Adam now, and the Windsor Chamber of Commerce. Adam, same question to you. Can you give us a high level on your mission?
Well, the best way to put it is that we are in the community building business. We work with local businesses. We're a community that has a wide variety of businesses of all different sizes. We try to create connections that help all of them grow. And at the same time, we're also dedicated to growing the local community at large.
So you also didn't, remind me when your original date was?
The original date for this auction was April 3rd. And what we ended up doing was keeping to that date, but because we did it online, we did it for a week. So we started April 3rd and closed it April 10th.
Okay, so your team also decided you could not put off this fundraising initiative indefinitely.
That's right. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year, and we needed it for the cash flow for our fiscal year. So that was one of the considerations that went into whether to postpone or go online.
Perfect. Okay, so Brandon, talk us through with Adam the fundraising elements and that story.
Absolutely. So as we jump in, Adam, I know your organization's a little unique. You're fundraising usually for some beneficiaries as well. Can you talk us through the changes you guys kind of made when you looked at your beneficiaries and how you kind of focused the event on what was going on?
Yes, so this is the 36th annual Chamber Cares auction. And in years 1 through 35, we held a gala event where we raised money for ourselves, but also 1 or 2 local nonprofit beneficiaries. So before all of this COVID-19 stuff happened, we had already created relationships with the music school at Sound Crossing and the Windsor Education Foundation. And so what we ask of those partners is that they solicit items and sell tickets. The proceeds from the items that they sell will go to them. Proceeds from the items that we bring in go to us. That has worked out very well for everyone over the years. However, neither of those beneficiaries really have anything to do with what the most urgent need in the community is right now, which is COVID-19 related relief for people who are hurting and have started to hurt very recently because of this. So between the Chamber and our 2 pre-existing partners, we all realized that since we were going online for the first time, we were reaching out to a new audience, but really we knew we would be asking people to participate partly out of altruism and a desire to help their community. So we decided to bring in 2 new beneficiaries, the Windsor Food and Fuel Bank and the Neighbors in Need Fund, which is a regional mutual aid fund. The way that we structured that was, instead of asking those organizations at the last minute to start soliciting items and possibly cannibalizing the sales from the other partners, we set them up as donation items and tried to heavily promote the idea that you come in for the shopping to kill time if you have nothing better to do while you're stuck at home with the kids, and while you're there, give some money to a very worthy local cause to help with the most important local community need.
And we're showing here how you guys kind of set those up. So tracking wise, it was easier by kind of having them be both a mini campaign. You guys were able to report back to both organizations, not only how much they made, but maybe who their donors or supporters were and that kind of thing, correct?
Exactly.
Awesome. And for what you guys were focused on, if we can jump forward here, obviously being able to raise for multiple causes is great. And we want to talk about obviously what you were able to do in regards to components. So as we look at some of your social media promotion here, one of the phrases that I love that you guys used was Netflix out. Are you Netflixed out? Are your plans canceled? Because I think we all are running short on things on Netflix and Hulu to watch. What were some of the things that you guys did to promote on social, the auction, and then some of the other components that you guys wrapped in that week-long campaign?
Well, part of what gave us the confidence to pivot to online was we just asked ourselves, would I want to participate in an online auction right now, and why? And the answers are, I would participate because I want to help the community. So that was one element. We really tried to publicize the beneficiaries and associate this event with a community benefit. Another reason was that we have nothing better to do. Isolation can be very boring. And so that's where these Netflixed out and stuck at home kinds of things came from.
And throughout those 7 days, obviously you had different promotions and things going on. What kind of social media were you using? Facebook? Were you using all social media? What were the main venues for your promotion?
So for social media, we were primarily using Facebook and Instagram, and with those you can manage your ad campaigns and posts at the same time. We spent about, I think we spent about $70 on Instagram ads, which were somewhat effective. They certainly brought in that much more in revenue from the bidders. We were able to track that.
Sure.
Oh, and then the other thing I should mention. So I mentioned I'm stuck at home and bored. I want to help the community, but the other thing is I want to buy these items. These are good items. So we also really spent a lot of time putting up posts about some of the more unique or interesting and appealing items. So those were the 3 things that we were highlighting through our campaign. In addition to social, we have several newsletters that are pretty well read, and we got a number of bidders just by putting that out in our newsletters, and we have a pretty good web presence as well. And actually, the most unique kind of way that we were able to publicize this was one of our sponsors, Windsor Federal Savings, who was our presenting sponsor. They were fully supportive throughout this, and they offered us the use of their billboard, which is electronic. So we designed a billboard together. I've never had a billboard before, and of course, not that many people are driving, but those who are, they saw us all right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And traditionally, when you guys have had your live event, have you always had all of these different components, as well as obviously you had these sponsors as well, right? You still had those same components, you just moved it virtually?
Yes. For the live event, generally what we really focus on with respect to publicity is the beneficiaries, the items, and the fun and glamour element of going out for a nice evening. Now, obviously, we couldn't put that, but we were able to add on a lot of community benefit and that stuck at home message.
That's awesome. And you mentioned your main sponsor there. We can jump forward here and kind of show how you guys were able to incorporate sponsors. How did the sponsorships, how did you handle those as, things were changing, and, what were some of the responses that you heard from those sponsors that you already had on board?
So the decision to pivot was ours, and I would say mine alone, because I took responsibility for it in advance just in case the sponsors objected, so I would be the target of their ire instead of others. But because we just have lines of communication that are open. As soon as we made the decision, they were the first people I let know, because they've made an investment in one kind of event in the hopes of getting various kinds of goodwill and publicity out of it. And now all of a sudden, I've taken their money and we're applying it toward a very different kind of event. So just keeping them informed of our reasoning, why we thought that we would be getting a good audience, and an audience that would be effective and good for them, and how we would make up for all of the things that they wouldn't be able to do by sponsoring a live auction, and trying to improvise ways of giving our sponsors opportunities to be seen and to reach people. And so just by being collaborative and keeping those lines of communications open, they were all very pleased with it, and some were more initially openly supportive than others, but they couldn't argue with the end results.
You know, Adam, I
No,
think
that's awesome.
yeah, and it's such a great point, because this is a concern that people have from a live event where the sponsors are splashed everywhere. Can you give us any examples of sponsors that were happy with the results? What did they mention to you that they appreciated about this way that you went?
So the number one piece of feedback that I got from the sponsors was that they loved that their logos and links were interspersed with the items. So anytime anyone was browsing the items, then oh, hey, there's Windsor Federal. I remember they exist now. Maybe I'll bank with them. You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
And they also were very happy with the messaging that we were doing around the community benefit. They wanted to be associated with something that was helping our community neighbors. And so as long as we were assiduous about associating their logos with the good that we were doing for our beneficiaries, they were happy about that as well.
Love it.
That's awesome. And having those links, obviously, they have the ability on their end, you know, on their website to watch and see what kind of traffic they get out of that, which is always nice to have as a marketing tech geek that I am. It's always cool to be able to link back to your site or back to a specific landing page. So I know we were talking about that yesterday, and I'm sure, you know, for some of them, that was a data point that they were looking at as, you know, even a small sponsorship or even a local community sponsorship. It's nice to have some kind of way to say, oh, this many people saw us, or this many people came to our site. So very cool way to incorporate the sponsors there. And obviously kudos for doing that very quickly too, as there was a quick shift that you had to do there. I want to wrap it up with a couple components that you guys, that are not foreign to anyone. I'm sure everyone's heard of wine polls, everyone's heard of surprise boxes, but you were able to do some unique things with your mystery box, with your wine poll. Can you talk us through how you were able to kind of expand the participant profile here and bring in maybe some new people as well?
Yeah, so we understood going in that the profile of our participants was going to be different for an online event that we're promoting throughout the community than at a gala event where we're you know, charging $47 a ticket. You're just getting a different audience. And so we wanted to have things at that lower price point, and especially if we could associate the pleasure that comes with supporting your local businesses and getting good stuff. So we particularly marketed the surprise boxes as something that was relatively inexpensive and is something that would get you a gift certificate to a local business that would then give you the good, warm feeling that comes from going out, spending your money, and being there to support those businesses. And basically the only limit on how many of these surprise boxes we ended up being able to sell was our inventory. During the auction week, we saw that they were selling well, and went out and tried to solicit more box items, and every one that we added, we were able to sell.
That's awesome. You know, I think that's the second time we've done one of these success webinars where the biggest problem was inventory. running out of items because of the interest, which is really awesome to hear. And obviously being able to support the community. Your mission, obviously you have your 3 pillars for the Chamber of Commerce. It's very important to support these local businesses, but it's all about making sure that, one, you can hit your goals, but also be creative and bring in new people to the fold. And it sounds like this low barrier of entry method with the surprise box and the wine pull allowed you to expand your reach a little bit as well, still supporting that local community. And I mean, anyone can do these things, right? I mean, how many times did you guys use digital platform before? Was this the first time, or?
So for our auction management, we had a kind of antiquated piece of software that managed the database for our live and silent auctions, but really low wattage, nothing that could integrate with online sales and marketing the way that this has.
Awesome. No, that's great to hear that you were able to be somewhat prepared to be digitally, and then when you had to go fully virtual, you were able to strategically think through that and get the community support. Maureen, I think the next question is, so what happened for both Melissa and Adam here? So I think we have another slide and a big question for both.
Yeah, I would just be interested, before we get to questions, maybe from each of you, a high level on, was there something that you were the most pleasantly surprised by this experience, just the wrenching decision to have to pivot and not be live? Adam, I'll start with you. Was there one thing that was more surprising over anything else?
Well, besides the fact that we pulled it off and our hopes more or less came true, I think nothing really stands out. I was surprised by the number of people who clicked buy now. We were conflicted about whether to set up buy it now prices, because at our live auctions, we never sell anything for face value. It always goes for under. And so setting up a buy now price at, say, 110% of face value, we thought, oh, well, who will click that? But we said, oh, well, we'll be aspirational. We'll set it up. And so many of them sold because people wanted to lock down the item and put their money where their mouth was in supporting the community. That was probably the biggest surprise that worked out. But it was certainly a great relief that we were able to make this succeed, and our hopes came true.
Love it, love it. Melissa, just quickly over to you. Anything that surprised you over anything else?
I think, yeah, just 2 things come to mind. We actually put a lot of merchandise in our silent auction as buy now items, and those will usually get very little traction on, but we were, blown away by the number of people who engaged in purchasing merchandise. Usually it's maybe $50, but we were at $1,000 price moving forward with that, which was great. And then just the overall success of the event, when, we projected kind of best case scenario, we actually hit that number on Tuesday and doubled it by Saturday. So we weren't expecting the amount of revenue that we got, and based on the fact that we didn't have an event and we didn't have to pay for food and alcohol, we ended up netting more this year because we didn't have all those expenses that we did last year. So we were absolutely blown away by the fact that we were able to have greater success with our net take home this year than we did last year.
Brilliant. Oh, all right, now we're going to try and get
Can I throw in something else?
Sure, certainly, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I was surprised by how many people were willing to bid on experiences that they would not necessarily be able to enjoy right away. Obviously, experiences are really good auction items usually, but we were worried that for a night on the town with a limo ride or travel or a concert, something like that, where people can't do that right now. They'd have to hold on to it for several months before they're able to use it. And we were really worried that those would not sell, but we ended up not having to worry about that.
Amazing. Love those stories. And you know that that is a question everyone is asking right now, is what to do with those experiences. So we've got a lot of questions coming in, and I promise you, if we're going to try and get to as many as we can. If we don't get to your question, our team, we spread the questions out amongst the team. We will follow up with you, but let's get started. Adam or Melissa, did either of you sell tickets for your original event?
We did, and reached out to our ticket purchasers to say, hey, we're going virtual. Here are your options. We're happy to, obviously give you a refund, or if you'd like to take your ticket and put it towards just a straight donation. Or we had the option of also allowing them to use that ticket purchase cost as a credit towards bidding. And that was a really nice way to kind of ease them into the process of like, oh, well, then of course I can still participate. And then they were bidding more actually in that instance. So that was a nice, easy way to set that up.
Absolutely. Adam, did you guys sell tickets?
Yes, we did. And just with Melissa, we gave people the option of getting a refund or applying that as a donation. Although I do like the third idea of applying it as a merchandise credit. Maybe we'll do that next time we have to cancel a live event.
Melissa, what approximate percentage of people picked up winning bid versus requesting to be mailed? And how did, that's the first question.
I'd say the larger items, people were very aware that that would be something that we couldn't get to them. And luckily the larger items were all pretty local. So I feel like some of the people who were bidding from farther away probably didn't bid on those so much. So about a third of the items we had to coordinate with people to get. Everything else was simply, something like a gift certificate or an emailed certificate that we could get out very easily.
Got it. Adam, two-part question here. Were the item donations solicited before COVID, and were auction item donors hesitant to give donations as the event or the threat was more apparent?
So a good number of our items were solicited in January and February as the storm was brewing. And as February progressed and we got into March, it did get a lot more difficult to solicit items. We had to hustle twice as hard to get items. Yeah, and a lot of people who usually say yes and who are longtime donors said, sorry, we can't do it this year. So we had to cast a bit of a wider net.
Okay, actually, that's good to know. Melissa, you had something to add?
I do. In addition to that, same exact thing. All of our donors essentially, mid-March kind of shut off. So we just went with less items and found that we got feedback with people saying, well, it wasn't as overwhelming as it usually is. And we went with smaller items individually, as opposed to trying to package a lot of things together to raise that value. So I feel like having less number of items at a lower value actually allowed more people to participate, which was oddly enough one positive thing that came out of that.
Perfect. Adam, a high level on your $25 surprise boxes?
Sure. What we did was, so the centerpiece of the box was a $25 gift certificate to a local business. So people knew that by paying the $25, they would be getting some random $25 gift certificate plus some other stuff. That other stuff included coupons, a free coffee somewhere, some pens from one of the local companies, just tchotchkes and very low value kind of coupons. But when people open the box, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's like a Christmas stocking. And then the surprise in the surprise box was a $100 bill, which we randomly put in one of them.
Oh, nice. Melissa, any thoughts, comments for those of us with events happening in late summer, fall, given the virtual/screen fatigue we're all experiencing already in early May?
For sure. I think it's just really trying to engage your participants in a unique way. I think our heads and tails really did that, but we were lucky enough that people were ramping up on the online activity. So I would say really just trying to get as creative as possible and figuring out what people are really interested in. Our quarantine kit was something that was very relevant to everyone. So if it's a matter of finding what are people searching for right now, what are kind of some hot search words that are getting used on Google at that time, I think might be really helpful.
That's awesome. And the one thing I will add, because I think they're probably too humble to admit it, that I think, you know, speaks very just masterfully to what each Adam and Melissa did, is they kept it authentic to their organizations and their constituent bases. And so, I mean, just in hearing them, you know, talking as we were getting ready for this call, I think, you know, doing the gift certificates to local businesses and supporting local, obviously is perfectly in tune with the core of the chamber. And then on the, you know, community side, bringing in these people who are a part of the general community, whether they were local to the area, or, you know, I love the idea of the maps and people participating from afar. So, you know, the only thing I would add is authenticity can't be duplicated and is impossible to, you know, to fake. So I think that's one thing, you know, for anybody as you get prepared and are looking at it, you know, what are the true pillars of your organization, and making sure that those shine through, because if Patrick tries to talk like Maureen, it's never going to work. And so I think, you know, being true to who you are is something that I think definitely, you know, shines out as we battle all of the different, you know, competing things that people are faced with.
If I can add just one thing that we found was really important is changing our messaging, because during our in-person gala, it's a pretty formal event. It's a very, you know, it's a fun event, but at the same time, it's very focused on fundraising for those who need it most. But with our virtual event, we really pivoted to make it something that was entertaining as best we could, make it personal. You know, we were posting silly videos, adding jokes into our silent auction item descriptions, really putting it out there as something that we're all in this together. We're gonna hopefully give you some entertainment value and hopefully raise some money in the meantime. So I think instead of, you know, people are watching their bank accounts drop, asking them seriously for more money it didn't sit right with us. So making it so that it was more so, you know, we're here for you, we're trying to help you out, give you something to do, that really seemed like it landed well. So just as a side note.
Great. Adam, question for you. What percentage of items were buy now, and what criteria did you set for a buy now dollar for items?
We put a buy now price on all of them except maybe one or two, and we set it to 110% of face value. I don't have off the top of my head how many of those sold as buy now, but I suspect it was something like 10% of items.
Wow.
Sold.
Okay.
And Adam, did you find, there was another question here that I saw. I just figured I'd jump in because it relates to this. How many of your items ended up selling of the gift certificates in the different packages? Did you see that there was pretty widespread interest? Because I know there were, at one point it said there were 100+ items. Did that ratio work out in regards to number of attendees that you had as well?
Yes. So the kinds of items that get higher bids, we found were different in an online event that we were marketing toward the community generally, rather than at a gala. For example, artwork, housewares like lighting fixtures, a kitchen sink, and then travel items, I think for obvious reasons. Those all did rather poorly this year, and usually do much better. It could be a combination of doing it live or online, or because, you know, people don't really want to travel right now, for one thing. What did really well this year were anything with a local hook. And I'm not saying that local is the way for everyone to go, but it works really well with our mission and our messaging. So things like gift baskets from a local brewery, or a basket of gift cards to local restaurants, a night on the town. I think I mentioned a limo ride in a couple of restaurants. We have breakfast every day for a week, or every week for a year, at one of our local diners. That went really well. Anything local, and especially gift cards, either got buy it now'd or sold for close to or above face value.
Perfect.
Awesome. That helps.
Melissa, and possibly Patrick, you might want to weigh in, but how did you keep on a time schedule? Did you have a script with slotted times mapped out? Did you rehearse anything beforehand? Like, how did you handle that?
We did have a script or a timeline kind of throughout the week to really schedule our posts and texts and emails. And that was something that definitely was very helpful in keeping us organized and making sure that, at 3 o'clock every day we were having a donor impact story. And at 5 o'clock, the Heads and Tails video was going out. And then, first thing in the morning, people were going to get a ping about these items are the ones that are really hot right now. And then at noon, they're getting which premiere item is featured that day. So that was definitely something that we did in advance. One thing that we wished we had done was actually do a dry run of our live Facebook on Friday and Saturday. We had, obviously a few technical difficulties, but people really stuck with us, which was really nice. And again, that's just, we're all human. So I feel like a lot of people are being very, very generous with their leniency there. But it was definitely something that I would highly recommend for sure if you're thinking about doing anything live.
And then I think to add on to it, I know when we were talking about it is I think Melissa said they, each person that was kind of coordinated had 8 million tabs open and their team was kind of communicating and all that kind of stuff. So I think the, similar to right now on this webinar, our team, we got, this thread and this, and we're trying to, everybody be in communication. I think over communication internally. And then exactly what Melissa had said is everybody has a run a show for a physical event and wouldn't consider putting together one or executing it without having that run of show and making sure everybody internally is on the same page. And I think that more than anything, remembering that that's probably needed now more than ever, because at a physical place, I can look you in the face and tell if you're listening to me, and virtually is a little bit trickier. So I think, having that plan, making sure that everybody knows. I love the coordinated, the message was going to go at each time each day. I think it gives your donors kind of something to look forward to. And similar to both groups here who did, kind of a week-long thing and examine the results and did it, I think is a great example. You can never be over-prepared or over-organized.
And one thing we weren't really sure about at all with regard to the number of texts that we'd be sending out, because at an event, you're expected essentially to get texts throughout the night. But we ended up sending one text every evening that was specific to our premiere item that was being featured that day. And the feedback that we did get from our post-gala survey was that was actually the right amount. We weren't bothering people too much. By the end of the week, they were hooked. They were expecting it. They knew how to click and get back into the gala. So that was something that we learned that was really helpful.
Great. Brandon, this may be you and Melissa, but large expense in mailing wine and auction items out?
Yes, I definitely want to hear, how Melissa, you guys took care of that, but we did on a previous webinar, I'm trying to think because time runs together, I believe it was 3 weeks ago, went through like 25 different ideas of what you can do to kind of, manage the cost and make a little bit extra at a virtual event. And one of those was offering for people to pick up the shipping as well as a separate item. And the organization that did that actually saw a good percentage of people pay for the shipping of their auction item to help the organization out. So that is one option to kind of manage the cost there. But Melissa, just real quick over to you on how you guys kind of handled the cost, or what the costs, taxing or Adam on your end as well.
Sure. We only had a handful of items that actually needed to get shipped pretty far. Otherwise, it was most people who were local enough that we could coordinate a pickup. So our total shipping costs were probably less than $30. And with those donors, we were able just to say like, hey, if you don't mind, putting in a $10 donation for your particular item, they were happy to do so. So we did specifically go case by case with that and just ask for the exact amount.
Perfect. And as we're running shy of time here, this has been so great and robust. I think the question that we'd like to end with, I'll toss to both of you, and Adam, I'll start with you. Both of you your organizations had to pivot pretty quickly when all this was going down. Is there anything you would do differently if you were doing it again, or is there anything you learned from your process here that you'd absolutely continue to do in the future?
As I mentioned earlier, definitely some dry runs through anything that you're planning on doing live, just for the technology side of things. I think also, we were back and forth about whether or not to open the silent auction up on Sunday. We had continued to post that it would be Monday, 9 a.m. And then kind of as the last minute, we decided to do Sunday evening, knowing that people might have more time to be engaged. And just looking back at the the bidding history, we found that it was 25% of our bids came in on Sunday. So I think that would definitely be something we for sure would do again. Absolutely. And again, as much as we could, just driving people back to that homepage was definitely important. And then as with regard to the live donation counter that we put up, I do want to say, like, we would absolutely do that again, but just know that your sound is on. So I'm sitting there typing and responding to emails, and I get an email from our board of directors, and he's saying, I can hear you typing. You probably shouldn't speak while you're doing this. And thankfully I hadn't said anything, but it was one of those things that could have easily, you know, turned into something that wouldn't be as well received by accident. So just know that if you are planning to do that, put your computer in another room, close the door, you know, walk away.
Perfect. And Adam, any words of inspiration for your peers on that as well? Anything you would do differently or anything you will continue to do in the future because of this?
Well, I would have done some of the things that Melissa did. The only thing that I can really think of is something I would have liked to have done was that we did very well in getting new people to participate, people who wouldn't ordinarily be a part of this auction. But I noticed during and after the event that a lot of our regular attendees who buy tickets and come to the gala event never registered, never bid, never bought anything. So in a sense, we were replacing our longtime bidders with new people when it would have been much better to have them both and have them supplement and bid against each other. So what I would like to do, and what I would have liked to have done, was make sure that we reach out to those longtime bidders, make an effort to welcome them, invite them, and help them understand that the technology isn't scary, that it's going to be a successful event, and they can help us make it so.
Terrific. All right, just a quick note, we've got 2 more success webinars about pivots coming up on the 14th and 21st, and then we'll be pivoting ourselves to outside the room successes, so watch for those. Our monthly webinar is Connecting with Donors Today on May 20th. With that, thanks to both Adam and Melissa for joining today and these great stories. You guys, thank you. We appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thank you.
And as always, great color commentary from Brandon and Patrick. Thanks to you, gentlemen.
We try to keep it entertaining every once in a while.
And again, we are here for all of you, and don't hesitate to reach out. We will absolutely be responding to any questions we didn't get to today. We want to continue to help you move towards your goals, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.